part one of the plan was actually to go out and attract the business. So now part two is a little bit different. Part two is how we actually conduct business in the city of Louisville. See, I'll give you an example. The bid process, the current bid process that exists here in the city of Louisville. Well, I say that it is inadequately run for sure. I am all in favor, and I would push for a closed bid, or I should say, a blind bid process. I think it should be on the merit of the company. Number two, I'm about Kentucky first, and it's the Kentucky businesses and companies should have the first go around at these bids. Now, of course, there may be goods or services that we might not have the best ability to furnish for a certain particular job, and we might have to sub it out to an outside entity outside the state of Kentucky. But the primary on that job is always going to be a Kentucky business, in my opinion, especially during this time. Now, it doesn't just stop there. What happens is that Jerry Abramson and all his underlings, I would say, have there's been a lot of back scratching in the city of Louisville. Now, what I would do is I would take the decision making away from the city itself on who deciding on the bid, and have an outside third-party unbiased institution make the determinations on the bid process. It makes it a fair process. It gives every business in the city of Louisville and the surrounding counties especially, hey, we're dependent on them, they're dependent on us. They're a part of it too. And it gives a fair shake, and it gives us opportunity and growth here. So we're actually taking the possibility of corruption out of the way and putting it into a third party.
So you're all for the baseball analogy, home field advantage?
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's something that you can't take to an extreme, because you don't want other states throwing up protectionism barriers.
No, absolutely
against Kentucky
not.
contractors.
Okay.
But
No,
there is a
absolutely
way to skew it a little bit. Maybe if there's nothing else, maybe it's a percentage factored in or something just to compensate for the tax rate.
I'm with you. Folks, 571-1080, you're listening to My View Matters Radio here on 1080 WKJK. All right, folks, welcome back to the My View Matters Radio show here on WKJK. Hey, listen, we were going into break, and we were talking a lot about business development and all kinds of different things. You know, one of the things I'm curious about, Jack Conway recently made a decision on the Cordis Group that said Jerry did what he was supposed to do. He had the authority to do it. But he also, he didn't contradict himself. The second part of that ruling was that, the Metro Council had the right to stop it. All they had to do was not approve the funding for the projects that Jerry signed a contract on. And apparently the Metro Council is acting like they were confused. It's a non-knowing violation. Apparently the Metro Council was acting like they were confused, saying, hey, once Jerry signed this contract, we were on the hook and we had to. And essentially they were told, you don't have to worry about the lawsuit because that's Cordis entered into contract at their own risk, okay? So I guess what I want to get at here is, the Metro Council has power that apparently they're not using, all right? So when we're talking about business development and the other things we've gotten into, how are you going to get the Metro Council, you're one council member in District 9, how are you going to get the council to get off their butt and assume the authority they're supposed to have?
Well, I think number one, it requires leadership, and so that means you have to take a leadership role, budget is a big issue. Sure. And with my experience as a small business executive, and especially as a financial advisor, I can find myself even at a better place than sitting on that budgetary committee. And I tell you what, the waste I know exists, and we all know that it exists.
Oh yeah.
And you almost got. We were talking about this earlier, in that you have to have different kind of view, and I think this is where politicians fall into a trap. And maybe I'm new to the politics aspect of it, but I know how to break down the financials of a business. And what we need to do is actually audit ourselves, and you got to audit every step of the way. There's not just one yearly audit that you can take a look at. Sure. It. Every single project, needs to be broken down and understanding exactly where those funds are going to come from. We're not doing that. So I know that there's waste there. There's always waste. So if we can get some controllability, if we can limit waste or cut 10 to 20% of the fat out of it, without eliminating programs. I'm not talking about the elimination of programs. I'm just talking about making programs run more effectively.
Well, it's fascinating because back in 2006, I was talking a lot about that, about trimming the fat, and I told everybody then I could cut 10% from the budget without breathing. I mean, seriously, it's that easy, and I've had to look through a lot of budgets. So you're absolutely right. There's a lot of fat in the budget. In my estimation, somewhere between 15 and 20 million could be cut without costing a job. Okay, So all right, so we can put you on the budget committee and everything else. How are you going to get everybody on your bandwagon? I mean, we talk about leadership. What do you offer in the way of leadership that we don't see on the council today?
Common sense.
There you go. That's the answer I'm looking for. You got to vote right here. No, you're absolutely right. That's the one thing that does lack is common sense. And the fascinating thing about it is when you look at our council, a lot of those folks are business people or accountants like Jim King or and those kind of guys. So they have all this, but they don't have that common sense. So how are you going to go?
Well, they don't have a dog in the fight. I mean, if you're a career politician or let's face it. I mean, I know a lot of times the politicians, they like to bring in the high-end executive type jobs and stuff, and they'll toot their horns about these high-paying jobs. But let's face it, whether it goes back to the education system or not, there's a huge need for middle income type jobs, manufacturing and distribution type jobs.
Well, that's our base.
And I don't know that I don't drill down into it, but I would venture to say that most of the city council does not have a dog in that fight. Then that's where you need small businessmen that are attached in some way, shape, or form to not just executive compensation type jobs, but just the working man. They need to be out. I know one of your big gripes, Ed, is the West End and the way it's just deteriorated for lack of jobs and everything.
Well, that's why they've let it deteriorate.
And you've got, and I think it's important that we get some candidates up there that at least have a toe in the water on the manufacturing, so that they've got a dog in the fight. Because as Patrick said earlier, says he'll do it if he were fortunate enough to win the election, he'll do it for a while and then he'll go back. And that's the idea: is you go back, and a guy that's going to go back or he has his roots in manufacturing and labor type work is going to be much more inclined and much more sympathetic to that industry, because again, it's a part-time job being a city councilman, and you got to get somebody that's going to go back into it, so they're not going to screw it up in the meantime and have to go back to try to run their company in the mess that government can sometimes create.
Bingo, and that's where we get into. Okay, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. All right, we're looking for people right now. Thank you, sir. Thanks, sir. You can reach Ed Martin on Facebook at, but that's exactly what we're looking for, though. We need those kind of people who don't want to be the career politicians. I myself am in favor of term limits. You were talking about audits. Chris Steeneman has said, as a mayor candidate, that he's going to have a full, complete audit done within 6 months if elected. Hal Heiner, on the other end of it, has said he will have one done within 4 years, her first term. So, there's a big discrepancy there. And of course the Democrats will say, well, we just need to look at things a little longer and find out exactly where we need to go. They've been looking for how many years? Yeah, we don't need a stinking audit, man. But, that's true. And so, to have somebody, that wants to get elected to the council who's demanding an audit right out of the gate is obviously a good thing for us as well. Because
how can you move forward? You've got to fix some really key issues before you can move forward. All right. So absolutely, I'm all in favor of we got to overhaul initially. We've got to do an audit before we can do anything else. We have to examine where the waste is. We have to actually. It's not. And auditing is not always necessarily a negative thing. Everybody thinks of the word. I mean, it is. Oh, yeah. It's a negative term, but actually, when you do a comprehensive audit, you also find out what you do really well. And you know what? And right now we probably need a big pat on the back sometimes and telling us what we do well. And there's a lot of things that I know that this city does extremely well, and that's why I'm optimistic. It's just that it takes leadership, and it takes somebody to actually go in there and say, you know what, I'm ready to get my nose dirty, and I'm ready to get in there. And if however long it's going to take, it's going to take. But when we come out and we start making really good decisions on how this city is going to be run and how it's going to run for the next 20, 30 years, well, everybody's going to know what's going on. Everybody is going to know where it's coming from, where it's going, and where our shortfalls are. And how can you address issues or problems when you don't really necessarily know what those issues and problems are. If I can say that the fire department and the police department have a shortage, and this is the reason why, because of the, and I can identify exactly that area of shortage, well, I'm going to be more apt to find a solution if I can identify the problem. So absolutely, we need an audit immediately on the city. And and yes, I mean, the city has a lot of wonderful things going for it. I mean, most people know this, but I mean, Louisville is 700 miles from 70% of the United States population. Sure. Geographically, we're in one of the best spots in the entire country. So tell me this: why is Indianapolis, Cincinnati, and Nashville exceeded us? Well, because of the leadership that we have in this city, and our inability to be able to control and budget properly.